like to welcome the Minister to the House and to speak on the motion to extend the legislation, which of course we debated in this House, as you said, Minister, just barely 2 months ago. I think I checked, and in fact we debated all stages of the bill on the 10th of September. It was unfortunate at that point that we were debating all stages in one day, and I know there's been quite a number of different occasions on which we've had that experience. We didn't, however, oppose the bill on that date, although we did put down amendments, and certainly on behalf of Labour I spoke about our concerns as to the powers it contained. I think we do all recognise there have been high levels of compliance, and it's useful to have from you in your speech today the figures on enforcement, and clearly licensed premises have been in high levels of compliance. I did note a comment in your speech that nothing has changed in regard to the virus in the 2 months. Well, let's just say this. I think we're all perhaps even more aware of the threat that Covid-19 poses in the 2 months since. And of course, what has changed is that licensed premises are now all closed, that we've moved effectively back to a level of lockdown not experienced since the spring and early summer, with level 5, albeit the very welcome difference that schools and childcare facilities have remained open. We've seen the threat building across Europe to the point where we're seeing much higher levels of restrictions now in place across different European countries than were in place in September. So I think perhaps in September we had a very different view of how we could experience living with Covid-19 than we do now. And I think what's more pressing now and what has changed is the urgent requirement for a clearer and more coherent exit strategy to be put in place. A strategy beyond simply rolling levels of lockdown, rolling periods of restrictions on businesses, on all of our lives, with the ongoing effect and impact that has on people's mental and physical health, but the ongoing impact that it has on our economy and our society. And I said before, on the 23rd of October, when we last debated an extension of COVID of special powers by the government, I said then, and I'll say it again, we need to see that exit strategy built on an investment in rapid testing, an investment in increased resourcing for contact tracing, and a much greater commitment to an all-island strategy. I think, again, what has changed in 2 months is we've seen really frightening levels of infection spreading rapidly across Northern Ireland, and that's been a huge change, actually, in those 2 months, and a far greater clarity now about the need for an all-island strategy. I think we need to be looking at the approach that has been adopted successfully in democracies like Australia. Other colleagues spoke earlier about Taiwan. Let's look at countries that have adopted a much clearer sense of purpose around an exit strategy, around a zero-COVID strategy, for example, where you can suppress the virus to a point where any outbreaks can then be rapidly contained when you have your investment in your rapid testing strategies and in contact tracing strategies. So I think we need to be looking at that sort of approach, and it has to be done on an all-island basis. Otherwise, we're going to be faced with endless series of lockdowns, and we're going to be faced with endless extensions of different restrictive procedures. I should say that we didn't oppose the bill in September, despite our misgivings and our concerns. We won't oppose the extension of powers today, but we do support the amendment to shorten the period for which the powers are to be extended. I think June is too long. I think we should look at coming back here to these houses in February, not because we think the threat of the virus will have been eliminated. Absolutely not. I think none of us are, sadly, none of us think that anymore. I think we're all cognizant that this threat is going to remain with us well into 2021. But because we recognise the need for parliamentary scrutiny of extension of powers, and I think that has to be acknowledged. It's disappointing the government haven't seen fit to accept the amendment, because in any other setting these would be seen as draconian powers, these powers and powers in the other emergency legislation we've passed. And we haven't seen, unfortunately, similar lengthy extensions on, for example, the ban on evictions. We haven't seen the introduction of statutory sick pay, something Labour has called for and really pushed for, and the need for which has been acknowledged by government. So for all of these reasons, we think there should be a shorter period of extension, albeit that we won't oppose the principle of extension of the powers, given the threat that we all face, and given that this threat is an international threat. And other colleagues have spoken about the US election. Clearly, as we all await the imminent, let's hope, the imminent declaration of President Joe Biden, and again, that does sound good, that nonetheless, the COVID context for the US election has clearly had a huge impact on the way in which people have voted there, for better or for worse, and it's going to be a massive challenge for incoming President Biden to deal with. Finally, just to say, as I said before, that we have seen extraordinarily high levels of compliance from licensed premises, the subject of this legislation, and that has to be commended. And the way in which the Gardaí have approached policing of and the use of draconian powers generally has been really commendable. I think all of us recognise they haven't gone in heavy-handed. They have recognised that actually our best way of dealing with COVID and of addressing it and of bringing infection rates down is public buy-in and social solidarity across communities, not the heavy hand or the crude instrument of the criminal law.